Everybody, it is Tiffany with Rock Bottom Wellness, and I am here today to talk to you this week. Actually, this is the week's topic, is the top 5 issues thyroid patients deal with, and then what you can do about it. So it can be really frustrating and it can feel so daunting and hopeless. And I talk to so many people who have just given up and succumbed to the mindset of this is my new normal. I mean, we're told that we have a new normal, which usually is sort of in the negative. So it equates to feeling fatigued, gaining weight, having gut issues, and feeling super depressed and anxious. And we're told it's fine because there are meds for all of that. And most of us have tried all of them at one time or another, and they rarely work in the long term. And it just keeps us on this hamster wheel, and it's a vicious cycle, and it just never gets resolved. So today I'm speaking not only from a professional standpoint, but also a personal one, which is pretty much anything I talk about in here. I've come to it from a personal experience and then have done the training to actually understand it from that biochemical, physiological sense, and then have found ways to work with it for people. So my story starts with being undiagnosed for several years and then eventually being diagnosed with thyroid cancer. So I'm not sure, and I don't think that there's anything to do with me not being diagnosed that caused the cancer. I just think that I had symptoms, and I shouldn't say think, I know in my heart of hearts and my gut, when I look back at test results, that I actually had a thyroid condition, probably hypothyroidism, and was never told that I did. So I therefore did not get help. But I'll talk about that in a second. Something I want to mention with that, which is kind of interesting, and it should have been a red flag or a clue to me or any other doctor at that point, but it was ignored sort of. So my thyroid was removed, and I totally thought the meds would just make everything better. And I was actually a little bit, I guess excited is maybe a strong word, but I was super hopeful that with this thyroid cancer diagnosis, and once they removed the thyroid that was defective and cancerous, they would give me the medications and then all my problems would be solved, because that was the expectation that I had. And I thought that that was the answers to all my prayers, and it wasn't. Well, I'm grateful that they kept me alive. You know, the thyroid meds alone just didn't keep me actually living. So it was, I don't know, it was really hard to deal with once I figured out that these meds weren't the end all be all and they weren't going to fix all of my problems. They just didn't, by far did not fix all my problems. But again, without a thyroid gland, I have no choice. I will always be on that, and I'm grateful for those medications. There's just a lot other things that can be done in order to optimize and feel better with a thyroid condition. All right, so let's get to those top 5 issues and then learn about what you can do with it. So the first thing, and I'm kind of doing this in order of my frustrations going through my process, and I actually think that they fall in line to the most of the people that I have worked with and spoken to about this. So the first one is fatigue. So we have begun to think that it's just normal to feel really terrible with fatigue. And because we're all busy, we have busy lives, we have busy jobs, we run constantly with kids stuff, going to the gym, doing all the things we need to do just to keep the household running and things. And it makes sense, and we explain it away that we're tired because we're doing all that. So of course, all that stuff is true. But the fatigue I'm talking about, and if you're trying to do all the things I just mentioned, when you have this debilitating thyroid fatigue that only a thyroid patient probably really understands, it is no surprise that you really struggle with just functioning with day-to-day activities. So I don't know how else to explain it, but I've described it in other situations. I described it in my book this way. I can only equate it to pregnancy fatigue. So if you've not been pregnant, or if you are a man, that's maybe you observed it in your significant other that has dealt with pregnancy fatigue. That's the only way that I can really describe it to you, where you are debilitated by it. Sometimes I was so tired, it hurt. My body hurt. I was so tired. So that is the number one thing. All right, the number two thing is weight gain. And honestly, weight is a major issue people come to me for, and something I've been frustrated with most of my life. Not so much that I gained weight all the time, but because the formulas for weight loss, because I thought I needed to be, always thinner or weigh a lot less than what I weighed or whatever, whether that was true or not, that was probably not true actually at the time, but it was frustrating because I was going through the whole process of doing calories in, calories out, exercising, burning calories, keeping track of all the grams of this and the calories for that. And that formula never, ever, ever worked for me. And most of the people that I work with, that does not work for them. So we tend to think that we're in this vacuum where if you burn by either reduction of calories or by exercise, a net effect of 3,500 calories in reduction, that equates nicely and simply to 1 pound of fat. So if you just lose or get rid of 3,500 calories, and if you double that, so burn 7,000 calories in a week, then you should lose 2 pounds every week. And if you can do that nonstop, you'll just magically get down to whatever weight it is that you want. Well, anybody who's ever tried that, it doesn't always work. And if it does work, it's usually pretty short term. Okay, so that is what's really frustrating. And you just may be surprised to learn that most of the people who come and work with me have weight as an issue or a frustration, I would say more times than not. But at the time that they're trying to get help and get resolved to their answers, they usually think of it as like a secondary thing. Dealing with their weight is secondary, or even on the third level. They just want to feel good so they can actually participate in life and do the things that they want to do and be with the ones that they love and actually enjoy it, instead of just fake it till you make it and will yourself to do these things. And I totally understand that. I was at that space, and it's not a good space mentally, physically, and otherwise to be. So that's the thing that people might be surprised about, that people don't really care about it at a certain point. Yes, they want to maybe lose weight or change their body composition, but it's not the end all be all, or it's not the first thing on their list, because they need to start feeling some energy. They need to start feeling like they have some motivation and some, hope in their life at some point. And so that is the one thing we start working on. All right, the next thing, and this is common for thyroid patients in particular, but it is very common for a lot of other patients too. So poor gut health is huge for people. So most of the people I work with have major issues with acid reflux, constipation, bloating, diarrhea, or sometimes they fluctuate in between all of them. They take over-the-counter medications to mitigate these symptoms. And I can tell you that I have worked with people who have been on over-the-counter acid reducers for 20, 25 years, but have never been told that you need to change how you're eating so that you can avoid some of those symptoms. And it's crazy how your body can sort of become dependent on them. And then people think that there's no way to get off them, and they're scared to even try, because when they don't have them and they're not doing anything to resolve the symptoms and change how they're eating so they can tamp down that acid or help their diarrhea or constipation and do some other things to help support that process, they're afraid of feeling the way that they've been feeling. And it's no surprise, and I understand that completely. But I think sometimes the people I talk to, it's the first time they've ever heard that there are other things that can be done, and that you don't have to take whatever the medication is over the counter for the rest of your life. You don't. There are options and ways to get around it and to actually heal yourself so that you don't have to deal with it. So I see a lot where people just assume that their bloating is normal. Pretty much after anything they eat, they get really bloated. They think it's normal to go to the bathroom for days at a time, because that's what they've been experiencing for the last several years. So they just think that that's their normal, and they've just dealt with it. And it's really common for thyroid patients to struggle with some of this digestive upset and lack of absorption of nutrients, because we tend to have low stomach acid. And stomach acid, hydrochloric acid actually, is really important for the breakdown of nutrients, especially protein. And so it's really hard to get the nutrients that you need, and your absorption of them becomes a lot less efficient. So then your symptoms can be worse. All right, so poor gut health, that's something that people deal with all the time. That was number 3. Number 4, depression and anxiety. This was probably next to the fatigue with me. And it sort of went both, one or the other. One caused the other. So it was hard to know where it all started. But I know fatigue and depression / anxiety were the major issues, major players in affecting my life in a negative way. And I hear this with so many other people as well. I don't think I've talked to anybody who doesn't deal with one or the other. And oftentimes there's a continuum of which people will go back and forth on them. Some people present more in a depressive type of situation where they feel more depressed with low energy and hopelessness in their mindset. And then other people present more of an anxious, tired and wired, worrying, panic attacks, anxiety attacks, however you want to call them, or whatever you want to call them. But sometimes you can fluctuate between the two. So I talked to someone earlier today, even where they are working with someone who has anxiety, but they internalize it. So there's those people that look calm, cool, and collected, but they're almost dying inside. They're so anxious and they keep it together. And then there are people who you can just see it. They just wear their emotions on their sleeve. They walk into a room and they kind of suck the energy out of the room because they're so, they're so wired. And you probably know who I'm talking about, or think of things and situations that you've been at when you've been dealing with someone who has, that type of anxiety. So it's a real thing. And I don't know the exact mechanism is. I just know that it's a complicated HPA axis between the hypothalamus, the pituitary, and the adrenals, and how that's affected when we have a thyroid condition, and how that affects our brain chemicals and affects our mood and our anxiety. That is all triggered by gut health as well. So as you can see, all of this goes together and needs to be dealt with together in order to actually feel your best. All right, so it can be debilitating to feel this depressed and anxious. And like I said, with the depression usually comes fatigue. I feel like anxious people wear themselves out, so they get fatigue on the other end of things because they're so wired all the time. And everybody's anxiety and depression looks a little different, so I'm not trying to generalize this. I'm just trying to, for the purpose of this information for you, I'm just trying to solidify and make it a little bit more concise and a place to hop in. So hopefully some of this information resonates with you so that you know that you're not alone and that you can get help for it. So aches and pains, that's another thing. So luckily, I've only dealt with this a handful of times, unless there's an actual injury for something. But a lot of people that deal with thyroid problems also deal with aches and pains. So this could be in their feet, knees, just muscles in general, a lot of headaches. I have dealt with headaches a lot, but what I see clinically and biochemically is a cluster of nutrients that are deficient, and that stems from some of the other things we've talked about, like with the gut health, like I just mentioned. But people with thyroid problems often have so much inflammation, and that comes from lifestyle and the types of foods we're eating, the medications that we're taking, and all these things that we're doing. Maybe we're using too much alcohol to try to relax and to combat the anxiety and the stress that we feel. So those deficiencies just lead into more and more of these symptoms. And like I said, oftentimes it comes in the form of aches and pains. So if we listen to our bodies and clue into what we're doing and what could actually be helpful to improve those symptoms, we can go a long way. But if you're looking at all of these things, all 5 of these things, and your thyroid gland is not optimized, and what I mean by that is if you're not on the right medications, the right dosage of the medications, if you're not taking it at the right time, or if you're taking it, taking your thyroid medications and taking a multivitamin and taking coffee and all these things all at one time, you are not getting the medication at the levels that you need. And therefore you're not going to feel well. And then this is not the episode for it, but to talk about the optimal thyroid labs and the levels of thyroid you should be at for each parameter that they test. So free T3, free T4, TSH, reverse T3, and then the thyroid antibodies. If you're not looking at optimal functional levels and ranges and trying to fit into those in the optimal way, you may still not feel well, even though your test results come back quote unquote normal. All right. So that's a whole nother, like I said, episode. So we can address that another time. But what can you do about these things? I'm going to give you 3 things that you can start to do to deal with these issues. So it's sometimes easy to think, okay, we should just jump all in and do all the things all at one time, and it becomes overwhelming for us, so we just quit. So the first thing you can do about dealing with one or all of these issues is to find someone who actually gets what you're doing and what you're trying to do and what this all means, and actually was dealt with these symptoms. All right. And so work with me. I know how this works. I have done this many years, working with people now, helping them resolve their symptoms. And if you have someone who understands that, getting to the root causes, then, behind your issues, then you're going to get some results. All right. So the term root cause is probably watered down a little bit, and to the point where people don't even really think about what that means. But what it is that we need to pay attention to what is underlying the reasons why we are feeling bad. Example given, when I was dealing with depression and I was going to therapy and I was going to a psychiatrist to get the medications, and we just had to keep upping all of the dosages, I always said to them, when will I actually feel better? I'm doing the therapy, I'm taking the medication. When will I feel better? And this would be after a year, after 2 years, after 3 years. And I just kept on asking, why do I feel like this? This medication is taking the edge off, but it's not, I didn't use the word root cause, but it's not getting to the bottom of my issues. And I don't know what else to do. I was still super depressed, distraught. I was hopeless feeling. And then for some reason, the doctor, this is what I want to talk about earlier, the doctor decided to add a little bit of thyroid medication to my regimen, and it worked. It actually made me feel better. I started to actually come out of the spiral of depression and actually saw the light at the end of the tunnel from having this thyroid support. So I'm not saying that is the way it is for everybody who's on an antidepressant. I'm just saying that for me, that was partially what I needed to do to get to the root cause, because the Celexa or the Prozac or the whatever, there's a ton of them out there, whatever it was not actually resolving symptoms. It took the edge off, and that was it. So that's how I work with people. I look at what can we do to support everything underlying so that you can actually resolve your symptoms and come out on the other side feeling like you were supposed to feel, not this new normal crap, not this fatigue, like negative, get used to it kind of feeling. That's wrong, and you don't have to be that way. So that's how I work with people. My background is in biology, microbiology. I've got a lot of biochemistry, a lot of anatomy, physiology, and then added nutrition on top of that. So it only makes sense to look at the cellular level of the causes of all the issues that I mentioned above. And when I'm looking at the cellular level, I'm looking at pathways of how your body is producing the different enzymes needed to break down your food. I'm looking at how you're detoxifying those things. I'm looking at deficiencies from the nutrient standpoint. All of those things together can impact your outcomes of anything you're going to be doing to help support your body. And you really need help with that. You can't just order a well test online and think you're going to figure it out on your own. By the way, I have had people do that, and then they went and they bought every supplement that was on the list of their printout because they didn't have someone guide them, and they spent $1 bajillion on it, and there was the kinds that don't even actually work for what they were trying to do. So you have to be careful with that. Don't go random willy-nilly looking for your results and looking to fix it with that type of process, because it doesn't work. So what I'm going to say is that I have a method, a process by which people restore their health, and they may feel like this looks like eating a certain way. So a certain diet or taking certain supplements and all that kind of thing. And it does to some degree. There's different ways we need to do it, and everybody has an individual way of feeling better. But while we're moving through this process, when we're honing in on your eating, honing in on your diet, not a diet, when we're maybe restoring your body with the right supplements, depending on the situation, we're also dealing with managing your stress. So dealing with how your body actually handles stress, how your body handles sugar. Is it dysregulated? Is it balanced? And decreasing inflammation in your body. So often these things aren't hard or expensive, but if you don't know what it is or why it's important to your overall thyroid function, your health and wellness, you probably aren't even dealing with these issues properly, and if at all. So before you dive into the next quick fix or the fad diet, I'm going to suggest you try these 3 things first. Okay, so start with 1. This is what I would say, start with 1, work on it for a bit and move to the next. So it's simple, it's just not always easy. And so I have a program called the Thyroid Reset Method, and it was designed for dealing with these issues. So this is what it kind of looks like. I'm just going to break down some of the parts here. So deal with your ability to handle stress. This is number 1. So add meditation into your life in whatever way that looks like for you. So learn to de-stress throughout the day, plan it into your day like you do for lunch or scheduling a dental appointment or whatever it is. Make it a daily habit and stick with it. So you can start with 5 minutes. You can start with just sitting and listening to the noises in the background. Maybe it's, the air conditioner running in your house, or maybe it is birds chirping outside your office window, whatever it might be. Make a list of 3 things or 5 things that you really enjoy doing, and then make that a part of your life. So learning ways to de-stress through meditation and bringing joy back in. We have gotten so far away from those things because we're always on the grind. We're always, having lists of things to check off and, tasks at hand. We're so task oriented that we forget about it in the busyness of life, and we see all the drama on social media or the news or whatever. And then things that pop up in our inbox, and then we just think we need to deal with those things right away. And you need to make sure you schedule in some time. Like I said, if it starts with 5 minutes a day, and if it's something that is sustainable and you can do it, that's going to go a long way of managing your stress, dealing with inflammation, and help to normalize and regulate your thyroid function and your blood sugar and all those things. It can get very complicated, but I'm giving you the highlights here of things you could do, things you could take away and you could start doing today. All right, the next thing, and you don't need me to tell you this, but just move away from eating processed foods and focus more on whole foods as much as you possibly can. So the SAD diet is truly just SAD. So the SAD stands for Standard American Diet. It's full of chemicals and they wreak havoc on your health. They mess up your hormones. They cause inflammation, and it just is not good for us. So what you could do is just start by taking 1 meal a day and making that meal as best, most optimum, really good quality that you possibly can. So example, if you are used to going through the drive-thru for breakfast, replace that with something you prepare at home that is made from whole foods like eggs and spinach, vegetables, whatever it could be. Think of things that you like. Think of things that are doable. And I guarantee you're going to find something that, and I hear this all the time, they say, oh, I like that. I could do that. It's just taking the time to do it. So if it takes 5 minutes extra out of your day set your alarm for 5 minutes earlier, and you have that done. So then you can make a commitment to having your breakfast, working to make that on point and make that as high quality, as least processed as you possibly can. And doing that, and then maybe adding it to the next meal or snack or whatever you want to do, but just start with one meal of the day and optimize that. And that will build over time and will get you moving towards your goals. And your body is going to start reacting to it because it'll start absorbing the nutrients better. Your gut health will start to be healing. It'll be healing better, or better able to heal, I should say. And then you're going to be reducing inflammation and helping to support that blood sugar balance. Okay, and then that leads me to the last one. Number 3 is to eat balance. So what I mean by this is to start, this is just a simple start, easy way to start eating macros in balance. So start by making sure you get ample amounts of protein at each meal. So start by a good 4 to 6 ounces, depending on the protein source, each meal. So that's 25 to 30 grams roughly, and then add some veggies and healthy fat to it. So if you want complex carbs like sweet potatoes, things like that, quinoa maybe, that would be great options for the carbohydrate, in addition to any produce like salad vegetables, peppers, lettuce, different types of lettuces, not just iceberg lettuce. There's not a ton of nutrition in there. Lots of leafy greens, anything you can do to add bulk and nutrient dense foods to your meals, do that with, that's another type of carbohydrate. And then it has a ton of micronutrients in it. And then good healthy fats like avocado, good quality olive oils, walnut oils, anything that you know that is a better quality. I could do a whole nother talk on types of oils too, actually, because there's some that are basically rancid and are really inflammatory. So let's say what to stay away from. Stay away from corn oil, soybean oil, quote unquote vegetable oil, which is basically soybean oil, and canola oils. Now, there are some canola oils that are considered to be a little bit better because they're cold pressed in the way that they're made, and they're organic, so they're not sprayed and all that kind of thing. But canola is not considered a great oil either. So I just know that in products that are on the shelf that look like they're healthier products will often use an organic cold pressed or expeller pressed canola oil. So if you're going from eating vegetable oil all the time and you go to cold pressed or expeller pressed canola oil, you're going to be making a step in the right direction, but there is room for improvement. Just start where you're at and improve from there. All right, so you have your protein base as far as like making sure you're getting good source of protein and a good ample supply of protein at each meal, adding those vegetables, whether it's like a greens type vegetable or salad type vegetable or complex carb, and then in the form of sweet potatoes and quinoa, and then a good healthy fat. So if you're doing this at each meal, but like I said, you can go back to step 2 and start with just one meal for the day. You're going to be doing yourself so much good because you're going to start feeling so much better. You're going to have better clarity. You're going to have better energy. You're going to have less brain fog. You're not going to crave sugar as much. Even if you just added it to that one meal, say breakfast, you're going to notice how you feel after you eat it until the next time you eat. You're going to notice the difference just in that short amount of time. And I'm sure I can say that in 2 weeks' time, you're going to notice a big difference if you are actually following through those steps. So it just helps you with leveling out your mood and your brain chemicals. It's good for avoiding the mood swings. And again, it can just level all that out. So that is a lot to unpack, or this could be a lot more to unpack. I could just go on and on, but for the sake of time and for the sake of you absorbing the information and just trying to do one thing at a time, don't feel like you have to do it all, but start somewhere, start with one of those things, and you will start to level and normalize. So again, if you feel that you need more help and more support, I have a step-by-step container for you to go through this process with my support as well. And if you'd like to get on a call to talk about that, I would love to do that. I will put the link to my free call in the comments, and it'll be in the show notes. So please reach out to me, schedule that call. It is, there's no catch to it whatsoever. It's just informational. And if you're ready to go to the next level and you're sick of, running around on that hamster wheel and never getting anywhere, never getting any resolve in your frustrations and your symptoms, join me for that call, and we will discuss more and see what you can do later. So, all right, thank you so much for being here. And I hope this information has been helpful to you, and hoping you have an awesome rest of your day. Thank you. Bye.